Welcome to Central News, I'm Hilary Entwistle. In today's news, the All Blacks may be the world champions, but more than 1,500 Bay of Plenty school children from year 3 to 6 will contest global rugby glory of a different variety over the next month. Malfroy School proved too strong for their Central Bay of Plenty year 3 and 4 opponents in the first of the district competitions on Wednesday, and will be joined in the Eastpac Bay-wide Championship in Paengaroa on June the 12th by Otonga Road School, Westbrook School and Sunset Primary School, and the top 4 teams from both the Eastern and Western Bay of Plenty. Selwyn Primary School with a pick of the Year 5 and 6 competition, with Otonga Road School, Westbrook School and Malfroy School also to contest the Bay-wide Championships. Bay of Plenty Rugby Union Development Officer Kane Hames says the players love the format that has seen increasing numbers participate since it was first launched about 7 years ago. Auckland's traffic congestion has an impact on Waikato business costs and efficiencies, Waikato Regional Council's Policy Committee has heard. Policy Committee Chair Paula Southgate says good progress can be made along the northern Waikato stretch of State Highway 1 until you get caught in congestion on Auckland's motorway, the same road we depend on for freight movements getting marketable goods to ports and essential supplies into the Waikato and beyond. About 25% of New Zealand's freight tonnage travels through the Waikato, so improving freight efficiency will help reduce the costs of goods for all New Zealanders, while increasing the competitive advantage of our country's importers and exporters. To help inform decisions on strategic investment in freight-related land use and infrastructure and boost economic growth, Waikato Regional Council partnered with 9 other organisations through the Upper North Island Strategic Alliance to complete an Upper North Island freight story. The project identified 7 critical issues that impact on the cost of doing business across the Upper North Island, which include addressing key road and rail infrastructure constraints. Now for our region's weather. Hamilton, you got periods of rain and light winds on Wednesday. Your expected high is 17 and an overnight low of 10. Tauranga, your Wednesday will have rain with northerly breezes. Your expected high is 18 and an overnight low of 11. Just ahead, Tauranga house prices. Welcome to Central News on TV Central. House prices are on the rise in Tauranga and have grown 1.2% during the last 3 months, up 0.8% on the same time last year. I caught up with Tauranga QV Valuer to find out about all things housing market. What is happening with the current house market in Tauranga?
So at the moment, Tauranga's in a very sort of settled position. The last sort of 12 months have been sort of haven't moved a heck of a lot as far as values go. There hasn't been a lot of properties on the market recently, and with interest rates being settled as well, people are prepared to sit on their properties for a little while longer and perhaps hope things head in the right direction. So yeah, so it's been very settled over the last wee while.
How does this compare to this time last year?
So last year was probably more subdued. People were a little bit more cautious and sort of a little bit worried about how things were going to go in the future. Now I think there's a little bit more optimism and yeah, people are a bit more confident about buying and selling in Tauranga City.
What is the average house price for a house in Tauranga?
So at the moment the average price is $428,000, and that's across the whole Tauranga City area, which encompasses Mount Maunganui through to Papamoa and into Tauranga, Bethlehem, Brookfield suburbs.
That's a lot of different areas. I mean, is it an exact science?
Yeah, that is a lot of different areas, especially when you have areas such as the Mount, which have the beach, location, and areas like that. And then Bethlehem is a newer area, so their house prices are typically higher as well. So it does encompass a lot and includes values right down to sort of 200,000, right up to millions. So yeah, it's a big area to cover.
How does the Tauranga area compare nationally?
So Tauranga is typically one of the highest sort of average prices in New Zealand. Auckland and Christchurch, I believe, are the only 2 sort of higher than Tauranga, which yeah, probably because of the Mount mainly and the sort of the newer houses as well. So Tauranga's not typically an older area, so we have a lot of newer dwellings. So yeah, so it is quite high. And I think just in recent years things have started to it's come back. We're about 10.7% behind the peak, and so I think it's corrected itself somewhat in the last few years. It seemed to get pretty high.
What's the average price in those areas?
So I think the average house price in Mount Maunganui is a little over 500,000, and in Bethlehem is 470. Matua is 430, I think, 440. So yeah, those ones are a little bit higher. And then in your lower suburbs, they get down to sort of 350s.
And what about the more affordable?
So the more affordable suburbs in Tauranga would be Welcome Bay, would be one, Ohauiti, Gate Pa, and they're typically not necessarily all state rentals, but they're the older, smaller homes, and perhaps on smaller sections as well. And so,
is it cheaper to buy a section in Tauranga and build?
Section prices overall in Tauranga have come back quite a bit. Vacant land was the first to suffer really, as far as when the economic crisis hit. That was sort of, people weren't building, didn't have the money to do it. So you can buy sections in big areas like the Lakes, which is in Pies Pa, which is the biggest sort of subdivision, residential subdivision in Tauranga, and in Bethlehem and that. So in your more closer to the city suburbs, in the infill, you can subdivide and build onto a rear section, but because building costs have gone up, that's sort of driven prices down on vacant land as well. So it's all, sort of much of a muchness there.
There seems to be a lot of real estate signs up at the moment. Is that affecting the market?
There are good volumes around, which in time I think that increase in demand hopefully will start to affect our values. Some real estate agents are reporting that they've got a shortage of listings and they'd like some more. And we've started to see some buyers coming down from Auckland recently, which is good signs. And to increase that demand may work and increase the values as well.
Is it a buyer's market or a seller's market at the moment?
It's quite a good balance. I think it's probably tending towards more of a buyer's market at the moment. I think values are still quite subdued, but there is a good balance there, and buyers aren't as keen to sell anymore. They don't need to sell anymore, so they're quite happy with the low interest rates to sit on their properties for a wee while longer. So so they're not as urgent as they used to be.
Most areas of Auckland have seen an increase in the average house price since the 2007 market peak. But Tauranga, like other areas, has seen a decrease. What needs to happen for some of these areas to see something like that Auckland market?
So the biggest thing would be jobs and demand. Job creation in Tauranga would therefore increase demand, which would increase the values. At the moment, there isn't a lot necessarily to bring people to Tauranga to increase that demand. So population-wise might be a little bit stagnant at the moment, and I think that would help.
South Auckland has a bit of a reputation as being the ghetto, yet our average house price is lower.
So that South Auckland area does include a lot of it will include those sort of lower decile areas or low socio-economic areas, but it also includes the more affluent sort of areas as well. So there is a bit of a wide range there within Manukau City especially, but Auckland has a higher demand overall, so that certainly pushes the values up.
Just ahead, Ken Ring. Welcome back. After a long dry summer, winter is certainly on its way. But what does this year's chilly months have in store? Amy spoke with Ken Ring to find out.
Welcome into the studio, Ken. So tell me, for those who don't know, what is the science behind your weather predictions?
Okay, well, I'm using what we call a lunar method, in that the moon really controls the tides of the world, and of course the main tide is the land tide, and the water just floats on the top. But really, when you think of it, the moon's forces go through the air to get to the water. The air and the water are joined, so the air lifts up and down at the same time as the water does, and so there's a tide in the air. Well, that can be measured. It's the same tide as what's at the coast. So I'm just applying tidal cycles for a location to weather data gathered over the years, and I come up with patterns for the weather that are going to repeat.
Well, it's all very interesting. So tell me, what will we be seeing for winter this year?
Well, it's going to be a pretty wet winter. For May, there's only a couple of days really left of rain. That's about the 25th and the 31st. And then June's going to be quite wet, and July. And I've got the 1st and the 3rd week in June pretty wet. Those are the wettest. And in July, I've got really rain within 4 days right through to December, actually. December, the 2nd and 3rd weeks are going to be really dry, but really there's going to be spaced rain amounts, and so it's going to be a wetter than average winter. July is going to be the wettest month, and the first 2 months, June and July, of winter are going to be the wettest. There's a few things to watch out for. For example, in the last week of July, there's going to be an extra high tide, and there's going to be a lot of rain around then as well. So I'm expecting some flooding from Opotiki to Matamata, and in areas that are low lying. So there's a few things to watch out for.
Okay, so we're all going to need our umbrellas this winter. So what areas of the country are going to be hit the worst?
Well, the high country, of course, and well, I mean, it's going to differ for all the areas, of course, and the South Island are going to get a much worse winter than what we're getting. But really, across the whole North Island, July is going to be the wettest, and it's going to be up here. It's going to be quite warm until you get to August. It's going to be average, so there's going to be rain and good warm temperatures. I don't think the farmers are going to be too upset. Anybody who've got sheep, they should have put the rams out any time after the 6th of May, because before that you get beyond September. You don't get beyond September, and right up till September there's going to be frosts. So you want to get clear of that.
Okay. And can you tell me a bit more specifically about our region? So we'll start off with Waikato for the winter.
Right, well, you've got the 4th week in June really wet, going into the 1st week of July. Then you've got the 2nd week in July really wet, and then the 4th week in July as well, and then the 3rd week in August. So those can be ringed, the calendar can be ringed there. Waikato is going to be sunnier in June than average, and it's going to be warmer. I think heavy rain dates in July, they're going to be around the 8th and the 23rd and the 31st, and also, as we said before, in the last week. August, there's going to be more anticyclones coming, and it's going to be a sunnier month, but there's still going to be unsettled conditions, and the Waikato River, I think, will be swollen, but it'll be starting to go down after that. So in terms of the Bay of Plenty, it's pretty well the same, except that whereas the Waikato gets December is going to be dry in the Waikato, but later on, January and February are going to be wet. But in the Bay of Plenty, it's going to be wetter in December, and it's going to be drier as you get on into the summer there. So there's a little bit of a difference there. I think the Bay of Plenty are going to have a much drier spring than the Waikato will.
Okay. Now, we had such a long, dry summer this year. So do you predict similar patterns for 2014?
No, I think it'll be a wetter than average summer. I think that January and February will be wetter than average, and I think the reason for that is going to be because I expect an El Nino condition later on in the year. El Ninos follow what we call the solar peak. We're on a sun cycle now called cycle 24, and as soon as that's over and it's going to start to decline around about Christmas time, you start to get an El Nino coming in. When you get El Ninos, you get tropical cyclones in the east of the Pacific, not so much the west where Australia is, and they can affect us just before they drift off. I don't think there'll be cyclones, I think there'll be tropical lows, but they will bring a lot of rain. We will get higher temperatures as we did before, but I think we'll get rain, enough rain so people aren't calling it a drought.
Okay, well, that's positive to hear. So also with the lunar...
Well, put it this way,
Yep.
in this year's almanac,
Yep.
I mentioned drought 6 times,
Okay.
but in next year's almanac, there's not a mention of drought at all.
Okay.
So, and that's in publication at the moment. And by the way, next year's book lists Hamilton in the main centres as well, so people who live around here can get a better reading.
Oh, I'm sure the farmers will be very happy to hear that. So, and with the lunar cycle, is there anything that's happening that's out of the ordinary that people should be aware of?
Well, what we've got, we have this condition with the moon where it goes north and south every month, and it also comes closer and further away, and they're 2 different cycles. And, excuse me, what happens this winter is that in the last weeks of the winter months, it's going to be full moon and the closest moon for that month, and also the southernmost moon. And so a lot of the bad weather is going to come around the last week of the month. Also, on June the 23rd, the moon is the closest it's going to be for the whole year, and that's going to set us up for a cold July.
For your yearly predictions from Ken Ring, make sure you head to predictweather.com. Coming up next, a new Sevens rugby strategy for the Bay. If you have just joined us, welcome to Central News. The Bay of Plenty Rugby Union and Bay of Connections have joined forces on a strategy to establish the region as the international home of Sevens rugby development. I caught up with the boss of the Bay of Plenty Rugby Union. What is the Bay of Plenty Sevens rugby strategy?
Well, the strategy sort of focuses on sporting and economic benefits for the Bay of Plenty region through Sevens. It's sort of something we've identified with the inclusion of Sevens in the Olympic Games for both men's and women's in Rio. You know, it's a evolving sport, and with that there's opportunities around the business side to use the infrastructure and skills that we have in the Bay of Plenty to bring those benefits to the region.
And who is behind the strategy?
Yeah, there's a number of partners involved in the strategy. Obviously, Bay of Plenty Rugby is a key part of the strategy, but we've got some great relationships with the Bay of Plenty Regional Council from an economic development point of view. Obviously, the Bay of Plenty Polytechnic, Wairiki Institute from an educational point of view. And then the tourism industry is obviously a big part of the opportunities that we can present to the international market as well. So there's a number of different, organisations that form up a collaborative approach to delivery of the strategy.
When will this kick off?
Well, I think ultimately we're already underway, which is a great thing about the strategy. We're already living it. So with the hosting rights to the National Provincial Sevens tournament, that was a key outcome for us early on, and we've been able to achieve that. And there's already work underway in terms of understanding what the opportunities are in the international market. And so those sort of partnerships are already sort of being developed as we go already, so which is great.
Where will the Sevens training hub be?
Yeah, I think it's one of the strengths that we've put forward is there's a number of different opportunities for us to host different teams from a national or international perspective. So we can host teams here in Tauranga with our existing infrastructure. Rotorua International Stadium provides a great venue for games and competitions, and they've got some great infrastructure around accommodation providers, obviously an international airport with a link to Australia, and then the Eastern Bay has some great facilities as well down in Whakatane. So I think we're blessed with some really good opportunities right throughout the region, so there's no one specific base. I think there are a number of different areas throughout the Bay of Plenty will give us opportunities to look at different teams or different opportunities and work with those to fit into those areas.
You've won the bid to host the National Sevens tournament. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, the National Provincial Sevens was something we identified quite a while ago as an event that would really showcase our strategy. It's with the inclusion in the Olympics, that's the best men's and women's players from New Zealand on an international, national stage showcasing Sevens. So it was really important for us to have that event as part of our strategy. It's going to be great based out of Rotorua with some already existing infrastructure. That means that we can use that event to grow the strategy. So it was a great starting point for us to win the rights to that.
So will this be like the Sevens weekend in Wellington?
Yeah, probably not quite as much a party atmosphere. There'll certainly be an element of that. We do want to create a really good family, environment where people can have a good time. So that's sort of more the focus for us. So probably a bit in between Wellington and the current event, which is more rugby orientated. We sort of want to find a good festival type atmosphere, but it's a little bit more focused around the family environment rather than the all-out party. But by all means, you can get dressed up and come along if you feel like you want to.
The Bay of Plenty has unofficially always been the home of Sevens rugby. Why is that?
Yeah, I think historically we've had coaches like Gordon Titchens. Obviously, Titch is being, synonymous with sevens, and I think he's been a big part of why people perceive the Bay of Plenty as the home of sevens. We've also had some fantastic sevens players come from the Bay of Plenty region and perform on the national and international stage. Currently, the men's and women's All Black Sevens teams base themselves here for training camps. So when you look at all those sort of regions, I think people have looked at the Bay as a place that does have a strong connection with sevens over a long period of time.
There is, funny enough, 7 key focus areas. What are they?
Yeah, well, I think the focus areas, they all dovetail together, but we've talked about the events. That's a key part of the strategy. Educational opportunities, we're starting to develop some really good some really good opportunities there with some key partners. And then I guess we've looked at the high performance infrastructure side as well, so we'd love to host teams. We've got the national teams here, so from a high performance point of view there's opportunities there as well. And then trying to get into that international market will I think provide opportunities for us as well to grow that seven strategy. So yeah, like you see, there's seven components of it, but I think they're all intertwined in how we deliver the strategy.
How will the union focus on tournaments and events?
Yeah, I think it's identifying events that fit our strategy, that bring what we talked about right at the start, I guess the sporting and economic benefits to our region. So the National Provincial Sevens is a good example of that there. It's the highest performing sort of local tournament, so it gives us that showcase, but at the same time it's bringing some economic benefits to the region in terms of those teams and supporters staying in the Bay. So that sort of ticks the boxes for us. So we'll evaluate any events and look at those opportunities as they come along, and if they sort of work for us and can provide that, we'd certainly like to attract those events to our region.
So you want to bring high performance facilities and programs. How will you do that?
Well, we do already have some very good facilities in place, so it's taking what we've currently got, understanding what the market needs in terms of the international market or the national market, and if we've got something that to add to those existing facilities, that's what we need to achieve. So at the moment we've got some great infrastructure like we've talked about, but understand a bit more what people want us to provide and then try and go out there and make sure that we can provide that infrastructure.
And the goal is to have these at international standard. How will you fund that?
Yeah, well, we've talked about earlier some really good partnerships already in place, so we'll certainly work with our partners to fund those. I think as we go, hopefully the strategy will develop new revenue for the region, and hopefully we can use that revenue to develop infrastructure as required. So I think it'll be a bit of a self-funding program, but equally we think there'll be people out there who want to be part of it as well. How
does the New Zealand Sevens rate internationally?
Yeah, I think the brand profile internationally is incredibly strong. The All Black Men's Sevens team have just recently won the 11th world title, a World Series title, and the women's All Black Sevens are going very, very well in the very early stages of their development. So I think internationally, New Zealand is known as the home of sevens, and I certainly think that that's something that we want to use and leverage off as we go forward with our strategy.
That is the news for today. We really want you to be involved, so like us on Facebook and let us know your views. If you have news including your own video and photos, go to our website and hit upload. Thanks for joining us. Amy will be here tomorrow night with more guests from in and around the regions. I'm Hilary Entwistle. Have a lovely evening.
This has been an Alpha Media production, a division of Television Media Group.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.